Hello and welcome to SETI Live. I'm your host, Beth Johnson, Communications Specialist here at the SETI Institute. Welcome to all of our viewers from around the world. Thank you for joining us. Please let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Also, welcome into listeners on the podcast version of SETI Live, available on most podcast platforms. As you can see, I am not in my normal place of business, so I apologize if the lighting is a little off. Stick with me here today, everyone. Ever since NASA's Dawn mission first captured photos of bright spots on the surface of the dwarf planet Ceres, people have been fascinated by the tiny world. That mission may have ended, but the data analysis continues, and we have had several scientists on our show discussing their recent discoveries. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Sam Courville, a postdoctoral researcher at Arizona State University. Dr. Courville is the lead author on a new paper looking at the potential past habitability of Ceres. And to quote many a clickbait headline, the answer may surprise you. Thank you for joining us today, Sam.
Thank you.
All right, so let's kick this off with a quick overview of Ceres. It's the largest object in the asteroid belt. It's now classified as a dwarf planet. It was the target of the Dawn mission. What do we know about it?
Yeah, well, so what I think is most exciting about Ceres is, especially when compared to a lot of the other objects in the inner solar system, is its composition. And you wouldn't really expect how crazy Ceres' composition is just by looking at images of it. It kind of looks like any other gray rock in space, but that's far from reality. Ceres has a ton of water and organic matter. When I say organic matter, I'm talking in the chemical sense, meaning large carbon molecules. And so per mass, Ceres has much, much more water and organic matter than any of the other rocky planets in the inner solar system.
So, yeah. It's kind of, Ceres is kind of one of those, like everybody gets mad about Pluto being demoted. And I always think, yeah, well, Ceres got demoted from planet to asteroid first.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel bad for Ceres, but okay. All right. So let's talk about what makes it interesting. Why are we interested in Ceres? So it is the largest object in the asteroid belt, which makes it interesting in and of itself, obviously. But what makes it interesting compared to, say, other small worlds in our solar system, like perhaps like Pluto or some of the moons, like Titan and that kind of thing?
So Ceres could have a bulk composition that's actually fairly similar to some of the objects in the outer solar system. It's only when compared to the objects in the inner solar system that it's has so much more water and carbon-rich material. So I suppose Ceres is fascinating because it's one of the innermost objects that is also water-rich. And when I say water, I'm talking likely mostly in the form of ice in the subsurface.
Yeah, so we do talk about Ceres a little bit as having a bit of subsurface water, subsurface brine, really, if we want to talk about it that way. But this is not, say, like Europa or Enceladus, where you have some vast ocean of liquid water underneath the crust, right?
So it's tough to know for certain. So no, it's certainly not like, right, you can just look at the surface of Ceres and you can tell it's not like Europa Enceladus in the case that it has this nice ice shell on the outside. So it's a cratered surface, and there are definitely minerals on the surface as well. But studies show that the crust of Ceres could be quite ice-rich, possibly a lot of ice in the crust. So you could imagine the interior of Ceres is like a rocky core, and then an ice-rich crust over top. And so there must have been some sort of differentiation process that would separate out the water, which would then freeze around the outside, from the rocky material in the center. And so depending on how long that process took, and a bunch of other variables, there very much could have been larger quantities of water within Ceres in the past. How that exactly looked, how it was distributed, that's a tough question to answer.
And for those of you who might be interested, we did talk to a scientist previously about the inner formation of Ceres and how it may have differentiated and how much water there may have been. So we have talked about it before. Again, the Dawn mission is kind of incredible. And I'm going to welcome in some people, and then I want to talk to you a bit about the Dawn mission. And I know your early career, but we'll get to that. So let me welcome in people who are watching from London, from Maine, Sao Paulo, Brazil, from Atlanta, Georgia, from Austin, Texas, India, North Carolina. Wow. Okay. So definitely getting the global feel of the audience today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Okay, so let's talk about the Dawn mission. Now, I know when we were talking about this sort of pre-show, you mentioned that, like, you know, your early career, this is your first postdoc. So yeah, congratulations.
No, I don't have a pre-Dawn conception of
Ceres.
You don't have
I
learned about Ceres from the Dawn mission results when I was an undergraduate student.
So, okay. I understand that, because I did not realize, like, when I was growing up, the theory of plate tectonics was like, everybody understood that this was a thing, but apparently, it was not a thing before that. So, like, really, I kind of came the same thing. So for you, how did you get into studying Ceres if, like, you didn't, have preconceived notions about this dwarf planet? You came in and learned all of this while you were doing your undergrad and graduate work.
Yeah, so I am my background is geophysics. So I studied the interiors of planets, and I started thinking about the interiors of asteroids, the interiors of rocky planets. But the science questions that was always driving me was wanting to understand habitable environments throughout the solar system. And I think we're going to chat a little bit more about that later. I suppose what led me to Ceres was wanting to understand what is sort of like the minimum, the simplest possible body in the solar system that could be habitable. And Ceres is a compelling object. It has a lot of the ingredients, and now I think possibly a source of energy for life too.
Okay, well, I want to talk to you about that too, because so that's what your new research is, right? Where your new study suggests that Ceres may have had some long-standing energy that could have fueled habitability. Can you explain that to me and to our audience in sort of a plain language without getting too technical? So what does that imply? How did you understand that?
So I mentioned earlier that Ceres is water rich, it's organic rich, it has the building blocks for life. But life also needs energy.
Right.
We're very intimately familiar with this concept. We just don't think about it very much. How do we get energy? We eat food. So, I've got some gummy candies here. Right, so I eat this gummy candy. My body's going to extract the energy from the sugar molecules. But it can only do that with the benefit of oxygen. So I'm breathing in oxygen. I'm eating sugar. My body, the cells in my body take advantage of reacting those two. I exhale carbon dioxide and I extract energy from the reaction. The candy, the sugar, without the oxygen is worthless, and the oxygen without the food is also worthless. So I'm taking advantage of chemical energy that's available from different forms of different molecules that are in what we call redox disequilibrium.
Right. Okay.
And so now we don't think, when we talk about possible life. There's no evidence for life on Ceres, but when we talk about possible life that could have arose on a body like Ceres, we're really referring to like microorganisms. There are a ton of different species of microorganisms. There's a ton of different molecules and metabolic pathways that microorganisms can take advantage of chemical reactions. So in my study, I look at one set of molecules that carbon dioxide and methane that Ceres interior likely would have had that, for example, a microbe could have taken advantage of to extract energy. And because of interior heating within Ceres, there would likely have been a continuous source of these molecules, right? So they wouldn't get all used up and then not have any energy left. There'd be a continuous source for a long time that would provide a small amount of energy that could perhaps support some microorganisms.
Okay, and so what kind of geologic or chemical evidence points to those energy sources and how long they were active?
Yeah, so you had mentioned like the bright spots on Ceres, right? So when we look at the bright spots on Ceres, what are those? Those are evidence that liquid from the interior of Ceres made it to the surface. Ceres itself is very old. It's 4.5 billion years old, formed at basically the beginning of the solar system. The bright spots, though, some of them seem to be quite young, maybe only tens of millions of years old. If there was liquid that recent, if there's still liquid, that means that it's warmer in the interior. And so if you think about, well, it has to be getting warmer with depth, and it's probably the hottest temperature is going to be in the core of Ceres. And so by understanding how the temperature in Ceres would change over time, we can get an idea of how its composition would change. So by looking at the surface composition of Ceres and imagining what would happen to that composition if we take a rock from Ceres and we put it in, if we simulate what would happen to it in the center of Ceres at a higher temperature, we can simulate what chemical changes would occur. So you can imagine like, well, okay, the interior is warmer, and the chemical environment in the interior is different, and heating the rocks in the center will release volatile molecules that then can provide a source of energy over time. And because we have constraints on what we think the temperatures might be inside, we can guess how long that energy source was around.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit more about this idea of habitability. So when we talk about habitability as scientists, we're basically saying the possibility that life could exist there as we know it. Because of course, we have one planet with life on it that we know of. And so that's what we have to base our ideas on. When we look at these distant worlds, we're not necessarily looking at them going, oh, there's life there, but we're saying, could there have been, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I would say, right, you know, it's a funny word. It's a buzzword in planetary science, right? It doesn't mean, oh, it's a great place to go build a house. It means that we think there are the conditions. We think that some Earth-like life form could survive in that location if it's habitable. So it's kind of weird because we have no idea if life did arise on another body in the solar system. We have no idea what it would be like. We don't know that it would be Earth-like. We don't know if a microorganism that arose on Ceres would have the same functional characteristics as a microbe on Earth. But the ones on Earth are all we know, and we know the bounds in which the microbes on Earth can live. So often when we talk about habitability for ocean worlds or a body like Ceres, we're referring to several different criteria, like there must be water. The temperature range must allow for liquid water and can't be higher than about 120 degrees Celsius. That's the upper known limit, approximately, for microbial life on Earth. It can't be too acidic. It can't be too basic. And then there has to be a source of energy that the microorganism can survive off of.
And so from the Dawn mission, so I just want to kind of back it up. So the bright white spots are salts that came up with some sort of liquid from the subsurface that evaporated, leaving the salts behind, and now we have these bright patches, correct?
Yeah, that's our interpretation. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting. I mean, it means that there was liquid water in the interior of Ceres. It could be very briny. It could be very salty. Yeah, so it's fascinating.
Right. Okay. So Ceres now has given us the water. Which means that the temperature has to be somewhere in there to have that liquid water, right? So it's got to be at least on the subsurface. I'm guessing at the surface, Ceres is probably not very habitable.
Not at all. But yeah, as you go deeper, it should get warmer. So if there's a lot of salt and other ions dissolved in the water, if it's super concentrated with dissolved ions, then water can remain liquid at very cold temperatures, and that would not be particularly habitable. But what we expect from bodies like Ceres, which is sometimes called like a relict ocean world, is that right now, Ceres is probably cooling. It has reached its peak temperature in the past. And so as it cools, more and more of the water freezes and becomes more and more concentrated in ions. So there probably was a time in the past when it was less concentrated. But again, we don't know. We don't have a constraint for how briny any liquid water is within Ceres interior.
And that was what I spoke of about on our last Ceres themed episode, which was that the way the planet solidified was from the outside in, and so that has created some very interesting things because it means the inside is so much warmer. So this all kind of adds together, everybody, I promise. So we have the water, we have at least on the inside the temperature. So now what your paper does is give us the energy component.
Yeah, so what I'm looking at is the chemical composition that you would expect for the interior as a function of time throughout Ceres history. So if we, again, like assuming Ceres composition started with the same elemental abundances material that we see like on the surface of Ceres. And then the interior heats up and reaches, maybe a few hundred degrees Celsius within the deep interior. That's going to change the composition of the rocks. That's going to cause water molecules to break off from hydrated minerals. It's going to cause some other volatiles and gases to be released from the rocks as the temperature heats up. You can imagine like baking something. And then those molecules, which are gases and fluids, are mobile, so they can move upwards within Ceres. And then them mixing with stuff that's closer to the surface where there's a liquid, maybe brine layer, is where there would be energy available.
Okay, so now we have the water, we have the temperature, and now you've provided us with the energy.
Yes, yes, there is a hypothetical source of energy. So now we have to verify it.
So how does this make Ceres compare to some of, I mentioned Europa and Enceladus, how does this compare to those, what we call ocean worlds? Ceres is not an ocean world in the same sense. So how does this compare?
It may have been more Enceladus and Europa-like, or more Enceladus-like in the past. Europa is quite different density-wise and size-wise. So the other thing is Europa and Enceladus have a lot of active processes going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
They are orbiting giant gas planets, and they're being tugged and pulled. There's tidal heating. There's lots of complex processes that are operating on those bodies right now. Whereas Ceres has been sitting alone in the asteroid belt probably for quite some time. And so speculation, but they could have begun quite similar and then have had different histories along the way. That's one of the reasons why I like Ceres, because it's preserving, it's doing a better job at preserving some of the ancient processes that may have led to the first habitable environments in the solar system.
It's just absolutely amazing to me that with the identification of so many what we call extremophiles, microbes that live in the wildest of environments, high salt, low temperature, very dry. There's all kinds of things where we have found stuff lives. So to be able to look at our solar system and say, well, we know something that could have lived under these conditions, so it's not impossible now that life could have formed in other places.
Yeah, right. So I mean, it's going to take a long time to fully explore these environments. But yeah, I am super excited to eventually get real chemical constraints on the environments today in the subsurface of these bodies like Ceres. And yeah, I'm super hopeful that can happen.
All right, I'm going to welcome in a few more people, locations people are watching from. I saw, where did they go? So we have Sweden and Idaho, Scotland, and I think, Aurora, Illinois, and someone else from Texas. So, okay, got lots of people. Very awesome. Thank you, everybody. We are talking about Ceres and how it may have had the potential for habitability for a much longer time in its past than I think a lot of people would have expected from what we would normally stare at and say, dead rock. Not necessarily so dead. So you mentioned that, there's still a lot that needs to be done. There's still a lot we need to understand. A lot of this is looking at data that was collected a while ago, and now you're digging down into it and trying to understand what may have been the case. If you could send another mission to Ceres, what would you most want to look for? What would you want it to be able to do?
Yeah, I think the 100%. I want to pick up a piece of the bright spots, because that is possibly a direct result of the fluids in the interior. And so I would love to pick up a piece, and we need to constrain what the environment is in the interior.
Oh man, sample returns. I want all the sample returns, and I want a Uranus orbiter. I want a Neptune orbiter. I want sample return. Okay. Right. All right. Thank you, Last Mage on Earth on Twitch, for the gift sub to Walking Stick 521. Very appreciated. Thank you very much. So I do have some audience questions, and I want to get to those. And while I'm talking to you, audience, please, 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 like, comment, subscribe, share. Please do all the things. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Terrence Jacobus is asking a lot of questions about Ceres. So let's kind of dive into one of these. this is a good one. Can you find amino acids? So you've talked about organic compounds, which are things with carbon. Don't get excited, everybody. Things with carbon. Have we found amino acids on Ceres yet, or is that still an unknown?
So there's been evidence of amino acids in meteorite samples. So if there's a common origin, then there would be no reason to suggest that there wouldn't be any on Ceres. But yeah, pick up a sample and we can check.
And we're right back to that. Okay, awesome. Last Page on Earth is asking a couple of questions, and I kind of want to see what you have to say about it. Dawn spent time at Ceres. How much of the surface did they map? Did they map it? Did they image it? What sort of data was collected?
Yeah, so Dawn orbited Ceres for quite a long time. I'm not a geologic mapper, so I haven't spent countless hours going over all the images, but there's images throughout. It's globally mapped. There was imagers, spectrometers, a neutron spectrometer to look at the abundance of hydrogen in the near surface. Oh. And then of course, just by tracking the spacecraft, you can see how Ceres pulls on it. So you can get the gravity signature of Ceres, which tells you about the interior. So you can get an estimate of, first off, the density, but then also how much mass is concentrated towards the center.
That actually answers Last Mage on Earth's other question, which was, this lets us know the interior. And yes, as it turns out, we now have a lot of data on what, at least the gravitational density of Ceres.
Yeah, and so this one is, so we can tell that there is some mass concentration towards the center, which makes sense. That would fit with our preconceived notion that there's more ice towards the outer shell than there is towards the inner. So there's more solid rock towards the center, more ice towards the surface. But there's actually still, it would also be neat to have a future Ceres mission that had additional geophysical instruments. Some fun ones are some electromagnetic methods that'll use like the solar wind to measure the electrical conductivity of the interior of Ceres. There are some concepts for this. And so that could possibly tell you if there's liquid brine in the surface or subsurface today. So there's definitely room for future geophysical investigation, depending on what we want to know.
I want to learn so much. I want to learn all about everything. I'm feeling that sort of pain right now. I like this question, and I'm going to ask it. You may not know the answer to this, and feel free to deflect. Let's boop Ceres. That's broken symmetry. I agree. Okay. Do Pallas and Vesta, two of the other like larger asteroids, do they share a similar history to Ceres? I guess the other question kind of is, how did Ceres form? Why is it so different from the sort of more rubble aspects of the asteroid belt?
Well, so to answer the question briefly, Vesta is not, but Pallas might be. The Ceres is basically like, it's a planetesimal protoplanet that survived. It did not get beat up. It didn't get disrupted. It didn't get destroyed by collisions. It didn't get incorporated into a larger object. I think, so of course, Pallas has never had a spacecraft visit it. It is not perfectly spherical, but it's decently so. It is also similar. It's a carbonaceous type asteroid. Okay. So those are, and I forget what the density is. I can't remember if the density is more or less than Ceres. But it could have a similar aqueous history to Ceres. Vesta does not. It matches a class of, they're called achondrite meteorites. These are rocks that have been heated and processed in like protoplanetary interior. So whatever large object Vesta was before reached much higher temperatures than a body like Ceres.
Yeah,
It's not spherical anymore. You can look at it. It's
I was thinking about this as after I asked it. We actually have pieces of Vesta. Vesta has actually.
We believe, that some of our meteorites match the spectral properties of Vesta. The HED meteorites appear to match Vesta.
And one of those was one that came down in Germany last year. One of our scientists, Peter Jenniskens, has been studying it, and that, I believe, was what was written up, was that it may be a piece of Vesta. So we do get samples from other places. It's just we don't necessarily know they were samples.
Exactly. So that's another reason to pick up samples, right? We could figure out which, if Ceres is the parent body of any of the meteorite samples that we have.
So we've come to the end of our half an hour, Sam, and this has been really fascinating. I could ask you probably a half a dozen more questions easily, but I'm just gonna wrap it up here and ask you two things. One, what is the key takeaway you hope people watching remember about Ceres, in particular from the work that you have done?
Well, first, I want people to look at Ceres and think, wow, this is a good place to investigate astrobiology. And kind of I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but if you think about we think about looking for life, we want to find life elsewhere. But what we actually really want to know is we want to know how life forms, why it forms. Right. And if you think about it, well, wait, why don't we just do that on Earth? There's plenty of life on Earth. And the problem is Earth is too complicated. We cannot trace the history of life. We can't figure out how it started. But Ceres is an object which may have had all the basic ingredients. So figuring out why or why not there is or isn't life, or it is or isn't habitable, is going to help us address this question. This fundamental question of astrobiology.
I like that. I like tying it all together. So all of this does come back to astrobiology. It all comes back to the search for life in the solar system. Life beyond Earth is kind of the tagline that I feel like we really are leaning on right now. And I know a lot of people would like SETI to focus more on the technosignatures, and we're doing that as well. But we have a lot of people at the SETI Institute and that we love to talk to about, the habitability of the solar system itself. So thank you. My very, very last question, I promise. What is next for you? You're now a postdoc. Congratulations. So what are you working on now? Are you still working on Ceres, or are you turning your attention elsewhere?
Yeah, I still do Ceres research, but right now my postdoc is funded by NASA's Psyche mission. So that's another asteroid. The spacecraft will arrive there in 2029, but it's going to a metal-rich asteroid. So keep your ears open for when that mission arrives. It's going to be exciting.
Oh, I am excited about that one. So Sam, thank you for being here. Ceres, I think it was an undervalued target, and I think we're starting to see the value of targeting worlds like this. It's closer than the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, so it sounds like it can give us just as much information about the past habitability of our solar system and how life may have come about. So I love this, and I love that we've expanded into this realm. So thank you for being here and sharing your work with us.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to everybody who was watching. You can read more about this paper in the press release, and the full Science Advances paper. Both links are in our descriptions on YouTube. So check those out. If you enjoyed the conversation, again, I ask you, please share it with your fellow space nerds. Subscribe on YouTube for more space science interviews like this one. Like, comment. We do read your comments. We try to answer some of the questions if we can. And then next week, we have 2 SETI Live interviews to everybody. So first up, on Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, we have a special SETI Live about solar storms that will be hosted by Simon Steele with SETI Institute heliophysicist Becca Robinson. And they're going to talk about coronal holes. So this is kind of cool. And related to some solar storms that have been, causing some great aurora around the planet. And then on Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, also hosted by Simon, there will be a discussion about how JWST found certain planetary condensation minerals around a protostellar system. So stay tuned, everybody, and make sure that you join us. Also, as always, sign up for our newsletter if you want to know what's going on at the SETI Institute. You want to get that right in your email box and you don't have to hunt it down anywhere. Sign up there. And because we are a 501c3 nonprofit who we do really appreciate your subs, your bits, your super chats, stickers, all of those things are great. Thank you so much. If you are in a place where you can be generous, you can click that donate now button at SETI.org and also help us keep programs like this running. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Sam, for being here. And until next time, everyone, keep looking up and stay curious.